Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday Night Podcast, and we have a special guest here tonight. I'm excited. And one of the things that I hear a lot from our audience is, why don't you just have like some everyday people on our podcast? And people have said they want to come on the show. But tonight I'm actually blessed, honored to have a good friend of mine, Cliff. We've been buddies for, I don't know, the better part of 15 years. And Cliff's a business owner. I'll let him talk about what he does, but he also does a lot of investigative work. And he does a lot of investigative work in the real estate industry. Questions a lot of, I don't know, I think one time him and I had an argument when he said that like realtors suck or something. I don't know. You said something like that, didn't you?
Well, we were in Mexico, and it was in a vacation setting, so suck could have been the word I used.
Was there alcohol involved?
Well, back then, yeah, I probably was drinking something.
It probably was a little bit, yeah. But anyway, we're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to talk about some things. But Cliff, go ahead. Introduce yourself. And before you do that, Cliff, I think, is living vicariously through me with a YouTube community, and he keeps telling me that he wants to start his own channel. So you guys can let us know in the comments as you get to know Cliff what you think about Cliff, whether he should start a YouTube channel and whether you guys just subscribe to him. But he's a cool guy, and you've got some a pretty interesting backstory and history. So tell everybody who you are, Cliff.
Well, I'm Cliff. Like Todd said, I've known him for about 15 years. We first met each other because we had commercial business space next to each other.
Yep.
And he was involved in one venture, and I was involved in another one. That's how we first became buddies. And then we didn't lose touch, but we didn't see a whole lot of each other because Todd, that business he was in, moved.
Went out of business.
Went out of business.
You can tell the story.
He was doing other things, so we kept loosely in touch, but then we really kind of reconnected a couple years ago. And he had told me, I started a YouTube channel, and I had watched YouTube a little bit on my telephone here and there, things that people would send me, links. But then I really logged on my TV and started perusing around. I'm like, man, there's a lot of stuff on here. There's a lot of good stuff on here. Like, you could get a better education here than you could paying a bunch of money to one of these quote-unquote universities these days. And actually, so when we reconnected and had lunch, he was talking about the real estate market and how his podcast is about real estate. And I remember bringing up topics like, well, our world reserve currency status, it's really in pretty good bit of peril, I'd say. And so we started talking about that, and then it just kind of seemed like Todd's channel moved a lot more towards general finance type topics.
It's all related.
It's all related, but it's hard to talk about real estate without talking about the finance, the corporate finance, and then the global finance system, because it is all interrelated. But I've done, I'm an attorney, and I do corporate finance work. And let's see, I can sum it up kind of like some of my mentors and senior co-workers have phrased it in such a way that I do a lot of corporate bankruptcy work, that we work between the attorneys who can't count and the bankers who can't read. Which, there's a little bit of truth. There's a little bit of truth to that.
What about attorneys? Attorneys that what?
That what?
Well, you just said that accountants can't count and banks can't read.
We work
and
between
the
the attorneys who can't count and the bankers who can't read.
Okay.
Now, if you ask my opinion, I would say most bankers can read better than your average attorney can count.
How about real estate agents?
Well, are we starting on that already? When Todd said we kind of got in an argument about...
That's why we didn't talk for 10 of the 15 years I've known you.
Their phone conversations go two ways. It takes two people. We went on a trip to Mexico. We went to Cancun. And it was with one of his lifetime real estate colleagues. And I had never met the guy before. I don't even remember his name.
Not important.
Doesn't matter. Cool guy. We met at the airport.
Don't beat on the table.
Before we were getting... Don't pound the table. We met at the airport the morning before we were getting on the flight to go spend a week in Cancun together.
All right, it's enough of that story. Melissa, how are you tonight?
I'm so good. I'm so.
Enough of that. Todd threw me to the cartels in Cancun because I told him what I really thought about real estate agents.
Oh,
There you go.
God.
We'll
That's
get
the
into
end
that
of it.
tonight.
That's
How's
the
that?
end of it.
We'll talk about that as amongst everything else.
Yeah, but hello, Cliff.
Hello.
It's great to have you
It's the
here.
first time I've met Melissa live.
This is the first day today, but it's been very entertaining, and it's been. I know that he's had, a really amazing relationship with Todd. They're very close. They have a lot of history there, and then Cliff has been able to participate in some of the travels that Joe and Todd have been on. So I hear these stories, but today I get to meet you, and now we.
And I don't know exactly what stories you've heard either, so.
Well, they're amusing. They're amusing and they're funny, and I'm like, what is this guy all about? But now I found out today. But happy to be here. Looking forward to the show. Looking forward to some serious talk, but also I'm sure there's going to be some laughs as well. So we're grateful to have you, Cliff. Thank you.
I like to try and laugh every day.
Well, let's laugh at this one. Let's start out with Mr. Dave Ramsey because we're going to dive in. The housing market is a very interesting place right now. It is certainly market specific depending on where you are. We are seeing across the country massive price declines, especially as we get into the new home construction. But we're not seeing, we have a very tight market here in Maryland. And so right now it certainly is a tale of two cities, as they say, but multiple cities. But I do want to go start off with, we're going to talk about a lot tonight. We're going to go over some what we call social decay. And the interesting thing about with Cliff is I probably have some of my most intellectual conversations with Cliff. And they go sometimes hours into the night. And we talk about a lot of issues that we're facing here in the U.S. So I thought it was appropriate that we bring some of those issues to light. It's a lot of what we read in the comments, a lot of what you all are saying. But we're in this real funk right now of an economy because we're hearing where things are doing great. I have some quotes here from Jay Powell. He was just, it was Stanford University. He was talking about, whether they're going to cut interest rates, when that timing will be, and then also some BS about the job market and stuff like that, that we've added, I think, 265 or 75,000 jobs over the last 36 months, every month, by the way. And I think we've covered this before with what are those jobs? A lot of them are part-time jobs, government jobs, and a lot of people are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. We're seeing some of the worst housing affordability that we've ever experienced in the history of housing. And Charlton, I'll say this for you, since 1989, since I started in the construction business, kind of like an ongoing joke. I think you guys want to be back then, but I certainly can think of a lot of fun things that happened in the late 80s and the 90s. But anyway, let's bring up this Dave Ramsey article because this is a guy that, look, I do respect Dave Ramsey. I'm not saying that I don't. He's done a lot of good for people. One, and we have a whole sheet here, a quote from Thomas Jefferson that I know Cliff wants to go over, some top quotes. But one of the things that we know is that, if you don't have the money to pay for something, you're in bad shape. It's great to be able to use other people's money when you have also the money to back it up, sort of like when we talk about dollar currency not really being backed by anything like it used to be backed by gold with the gold standard. So it's kind of like one of those things where Dave has helped people saying, hey, if you can't afford something, don't buy it and pay cash or pay it off and get out of debt. And I believe that. I think that we live a lot longer with a lot less stress if we can live in a society like that. Unfortunately, we're strapped. But what Dave says here, and this is a relatively new article, guys. But Dave said, I don't know, Joe, is this today? I scrolled down a little bit. I forget what it was, today or yesterday or so, April 7th. So this article really headlines where Dave Ramsey is, go back up to the top, is tooting his horn, basically saying that he predicts what's in store for the housing market again after saying he got it right for 2 years. So he talks about how he's been in the housing industry for 40 years and that there won't be a housing crash. And I think the question is some people, in my opinion, are just, they're not connected with the reality that people just can't afford the homes that they're in. And when you're suppressing things like foreclosures and you're coming up with all these forbearance options, and remodification options. And now we're gonna go over an article that was written in by actually Christine Barber. She's state representative for the Middlesex district in Massachusetts. She's actually proposing. It's right here. It says families also need protections now. I am also working to include a policy I filed to create a Massachusetts foreclosure prevention program that will require lenders to engage in conferences with homeowners to review all of available prevention options well before an impending foreclosure. Goes on to say losing a home is bad and horrible for the family, which I agree. But my point is you can't look at one article where we're not talking about housing prices crashing or coming down and then flip to another mainstream news article that says that families need foreclosure protection. Why is that even something that we're talking about 4 years, after the country was shut down and people are working and we have all this job growth and things like that? So I think really two things are happening right now. One, are we suppressing foreclosures? If that's the case, we're controlling the housing market to a degree because people are living for free. So if you're in a moratorium or some type of workout, or you're in your home and you're just living there, not paying your mortgage, well, what we're really doing is housing more people for free. We're not really talking about what should be correcting the housing market. And on the flip side of it, we have people that want to buy a house that can't buy a house because they don't make enough money, and they're making $90,000, $100,000 in combined income, and they still can't afford a home. So we're going to dive into some of these. But before we kind of go off on from that, I just want to go over this article from Home Depot. So it says that the housing market is so strained that Home Depot is selling tiny homes. And I know if you follow my channel, I have you can pull that up. There you go, Joe. Thank you. If you have followed me, I'm not against tiny homes, but if that's going to be our solution to where we're putting people in backyard sheds, as an attempt to solve affordable housing, we got major problems here in the country. And one final chart, just getting our night kicked off here. And by the way, I don't know, who knows what's going to happen tonight. We may bring on some callers. If you want to come on the channel, maybe you have a question for Cliff or Melissa. We may take you. But I want to go over this chart here because there's a couple things that we know for a fact. Number one, we're still not getting the data. I'm in the real estate industry, as you know, and actively every day, boots on the ground, helping buyers and sellers. I work this business and manage agents, and I can tell you that we can't get good data. Even from the MLS, everything's backward looking. It's the same thing that the Fed's looking at and everyone else, I guess, making monetary decisions, policy decisions for you and me. But let's look at this chart here because this breaks down a couple things we want to focus on. Number one, since we'll call it the peak, they said September of 2022, new home prices have dropped $77,200 as far as the average price correction, which is almost 17% price drop from a sales price that was $477,700 to now $400,500. And the interesting thing that I want to point out here is how do we know what's really going on in the housing market, and how can we headline the news by saying home prices are going up by 5% nationwide, and that you as a buyer should be paying more for your home when we can't get accurate data? The existing home average home price is backdating till October of 2023. Guys, it's almost 6 months ago. So when we're not seeing the Federal Reserve post accurate data on what's happening with home prices, we can certainly push a narrative that prices are going up if we can't look at what's really going on an average or a median price level. And that's been my issue here, because if you're buying a house, and a lot of you buyers out there, if you're buying a house and you're going and looking for a home, if you're seeing in a news article that says the home prices are going up 5% or projected to go up another 5%, what are you thinking when you're going to look at the home? You're thinking, a lot of you, I need to offer more money. And to topple that, your agent's probably telling you the same thing. Now, it may be a fact when you get everyone thinking that, and now we're competing again, and we're eliminating home inspections and paying cash and doing these things, paying $150,000 over price of a $600,000 home. It's easy to see where not being able to look at the data, combined with everybody cheerleading you on, this is what we're being faced with. But and one more thing, if you're trying to get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage right now, if you don't have stellar credit, you may be close to 8% to get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So for those that said we'll be back to 4% this year, and based on, and we'll cover what the Fed said at Stanford, it doesn't look like prices are coming down too soon. So, Cliff, I know you may have a couple comments to that.
Well, on the housing prices, I'm not a real estate expert. I don't work directly in the real estate industry, particularly not the sales industry. The biggest thing that I do know that's touted as a set fact that is not sustainable is the prices nationwide went up 40% across the COVID era, right? I mean, that's pretty much accepted as a fact, right? That is far from anything sustainable. I know Todd real well. I know numerous people who have bought and sold houses in the past year. Anecdotally, they don't seem like they're coming down a whole lot to me here. But not being a real estate expert, when I hear somebody say the national average of anything related to residential real estate, it doesn't seem that relevant to me because it's so localized. And we have conversations all the time. Does it seem like they're coming down around here to you?
It depends. So
Right.
if it is move-in ready, if it is priced where it should be priced, at least not overinflated on the list side, we're still seeing multiple offers and they're getting more than list price. If the house is not move-in ready, and this is the sellers, some of them just feel that they can peddle their homes that have had deferred maintenance. I mean, I have a hard time even getting people to think about cleaning, let alone anything else, because that's the world we've lived in. You could have broken everything and still sell your home. But if these sellers are getting spanked pretty hard, if it's not sold or under contract within the first 14 days, you're usually seeing a price reduction, and there's opportunity out there. But so it's either price right, move-in ready, and it's selling within 3 days. Multiple offers. I just had one that my one buyer we lost. I wasn't kidding. $140,000 over list price was the offer of a $600,000 house. So, it is. But then we also see other areas across the country where we are seeing notable declines. And it's important to say that the housing market crashes first in new home construction. So I think when we're looking at least the Fed data, the Federal Reserve data that we just witnessed dropping from really September of 22 about 17%, that is a clear indication that new home sales are waning. They're struggling. And so that's usually the first thing, because people want a new house over an existing house, number one. Number two, the new home construction is the only real inventory that's out there. So when we're looking at this new home inventory, it's easier to, at least for me, to look at it and say things are really softening when the only inventory out there is having price reductions and concessions, such as rate buy downs and add-ons that they're giving away. The problem here locally is that we don't have the new construction boom that they have in Austin, Texas, or most of the other states in the Sun Belt.
I just wanted to say there are agents still creating the frenzy, though, because I just saw in comments on the MLS, there was a home that was listed on Friday, and yesterday they said we want the highest and best by noon. So there are agents that are unfortunately still creating the same issues that we went through during COVID as well.
Well, and I think looking at it really objectively, going out to buy a house is not your average purchase decision. I mean, it's not even like buying a car. you have somebody with you. At least up to now, it's still pretty standard the case. The seller has an agent and the buyer has an agent. And you're conditioned by the agent of what to expect, what's as far as prices. Zillow conditions you as to what to expect. And, you're going to hear things like, well, that's the list price. It's not like you just go up and look at a house and say, yeah, I'd pay that for that. There's so much more involved. You got hand-holding by the agents. They don't want you wasting their time. A person doesn't necessarily want to waste an agent's time either, but it's what I'm hearing from people is they don't seem like they're going down a lot here, and you hear a lot of, I went and looked at this house and, oh my God, that much for that? Like that's what I hear a lot of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Like you say, it's crazy, but townhomes around here, and I'm talking an average, a run-of-the-mill townhome, $500,000, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the school district, but it's expensive.
Yeah, and a lot of the new construction is absolute junk, in my opinion. And for somebody that's been building for decades, the product is substandard. I mean, but it's not I'm not blaming the builders. A lot of it is the supplies themselves. I mean, you look at 5/8 sheathing, house sheathing, exterior sheathing. It's garbage. I mean, you can literally, if you miss this stud when you're nailing it up, you actually see a physical hole where the nail shoots completely through the siding and you have a hole in the siding. It's that cheap. And you can break it in half with basically your hands and your feet. And this is what we're building with. The lumber that's coming out, the framing lumber, it's twisted, it's garbage. I just had a project not that long ago, and I went to a supplier to handpick some lumber, and I made them pull another pallet down because it was garbage, and they were looking at me like I was nuts. But if you guys are in the construction business, if you guys are framers out there, you can comment on your thoughts on that. But this is just the beginning. The products, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, look at the light fixtures. They're garbage. What's being made right now is at the absolute top dollar. So they determine now it's not a matter of let's deliver a good product that lasts. It's how can we deliver the cheapest garbage and charge the most amount for it. And this is what we're being fed. And the problem is that when this happens for a period of time, we start to just accept it as that's the standard. That's the new standard. Well, it's garbage. We buy it, it breaks, it doesn't last, and that's okay. And, so I was just on a podcast with Mike Maloney. It comes out on Saturday. Him and I dove into a lot of different things. I actually had him talk about why he moved to Puerto Rico, which was interesting. But he said, I was talking about globalization. I was talking about offshore manufacturing. And I was saying, and this isn't something, globalization started happening in the 1800s. But really, we saw it here in the U.S. the most. What we can remember, at least in my lifetime, is the 70s and 80s, where we shipped, 4 million manufacturing jobs offshore to make a cheaper product. And Mike said, yeah, well, they wanted to make the products less. And I'm going, it's not making it less. If you build junk and you have to buy it 3 or 4 times, what happened to the can opener that lasts 30 years, right? But when you look at it and you go, okay, they didn't. And he said, one of the arguments that we kind of got in was he was talking about, people are mad at rich people. And he's like, and you shouldn't be mad at rich people because you should champion rich people because they bring the jobs and the opportunities. And I said, Mike, that's bullshit. That's not all across the board. You've got 2 types of business people. You have small business people and you have corporate America. And corporate America with the bureaucrats are trying to build profit for their shareholders. It's in direct conflict of delivering a good product.
Well, I know for this show, the headline was what's societal decay, and is the country changing, and what direction is it going in? And I've had the good fortune of living in various other parts of the world, mostly in Western Europe, but I've been around Eastern Europe, pre and post Soviet Union. I've been to Russia, been around those parts a little bit, and I've definitely noticed over time, and I think it kind of can dovetail with what you're talking about with the quality of the products. When you're not the top dog, you get what you get. You know, we still have a big variety of products available, but
Not
they're
really.
expensive and they're not high quality. But do we demand high quality? I mean, everything in the United States is a lot more
The
temporary.
more expensive products are still junk.
I'd agree.
I mean, they're just more expensive junk.
But I don't think we get, and it could be changing globally. I think I'm already starting to see that we don't get the quantity and the quality of the products that we used to in the same time frame that we used to. And when you're moving down the global pecking order, that's the direction that it goes. You know, you don't always get the best stuff at the best prices. People don't want to make you deals. They don't. I mean, I don't notice so much in food quality, but yeah, definitely if you go to, things are built cheap. They're built cheaply. I deal in the automotive industry a fair amount. Cars are definitely getting way less quality, but it's not like it's a hoodwink or a surprise. They are not built. Most cars built today, unless it is something with the collector value, they're not, and they are maintained and substantially invested into. They're not going to run in 10 years. And I'm not just talking about electric versus gas-powered cars, the actual materials that they use to build the cars. Like the current generation of Porsche 911, the oil pans are plastic. Plastic.
There you go.
But they'll tell you it's lightweight, it's space-age plastic. I know what plastic
Space age.
Well-
It's space age plastic.
I mean,
It breaks and
But-
disintegrates.
I mean, that's the example that pops in my head. That's the most iconic sports car by a German-engineered firm. All of them are still made in Germany. None of those are outsourced, manufactured in satellite plants, and the oil pans are plastic. After it heats up and cools down 50,000 times, gets the engine temperature to freezing cold, there is no way that oil pan is going to still be functional.
And how much is that car?
Today, you're basically not touching any current generation 911 for under $100,000.
Yeah.
If you want a cheaper car, one of their cars, less than 6 figures, you're buying a Cayman or a Boxster. But they're like every other car company. Most of what they sell is SUVs now. That's not even their big money maker anymore.
Well, I mean, you want an SUV if you want to survive on the road. I mean, a 911 is a tiny car, and if you go out there today and you want to drive like a normal person with some sanity,
I would say a real piece of junk SUV, you're at a greater safety risk than you're at. But people feel better sitting up high, and you hear that a lot.
I feel better in my truck.
And that's why you drive it everywhere.
I do. I do. It's not
But-
the easiest on fuel, but I mean, it's,
Cars are a lot safer now than they were even 20 years ago. I mean, they're much, much safer.
come on.
They are. They're much safer.
Then metal, then real metal.
Well, the oil pan is not going to affect your safety in a crash. I'm not
What
talking
the
about
quarter
functional
panel, the
longevity.
door, the
No, but
trunk lid,
I
the
will
hood.
say, look, unless we're getting fake data from the NTSB like we're getting from everywhere else, they crash test every car that gets sold in the United States.
How about if you get hit with one of these maniacs driving 115
Well,
miles an hour down? Why don't we talk about that?
That's a whole nother topic that when you say we have conversations sometimes that go into the night, and we do. We talk about all kinds of stuff, and when you bring it up and phrase it that way, why are we talking? We're talking about it because we're interested in it, right?
Yes.
We're not talking about it because, hey, how
'Cause
about
we're
this
interested
idea
in
for
it,
YouTube?
in
We're
making
talking
it.
about it because that's what's on our mind. And
That's one societal breakdown, isn't
well,
it?
when Todd said you want to come on the show and talk, I said, well, what are we going to talk about? He said, oh, don't worry about it. And then in my mind, I thought, oh, well, Todd's got structure. He's going to have an idea. He said, just show up and talk like you normally do. I said, well, I can do that.
Then he realizes
And
I
then
don't
he
do any prep.
then he had his show notes, and it's like one page, it's maybe 100 words. I'm like, Todd, that's not really a lot of data. Aren't we talking? This is a 2-hour show. But I knew
didn't
one of the
believe
things
me.
we were going to talk about was, I said, well, I said, can I ask you questions? He said, yeah, you can ask me anything you want. I said, all right, so I can ask you. You drive on the interstates every day, going from your residence to your workplace. Do people drive 100 miles an hour?
I drive around showing houses all day long, especially on the weekends.
But do they? Do
No,
you?
it's ridiculous. They
I mean,
go-
and I'm
they're
not talking
over 100 miles an hour.
I'm not talking 80 miles an hour.
No, over
I am
100 miles an
I
hour.
know what 100 miles. I worked in professional motorsports for a brief time, also.
Yeah.
I know what 100 miles an hour looks like. They drive over 100 miles, and that's different.
And where are the police?
Say it again.
Where are the police?
Right? Well, they're not.
It depends on the county. I mean, there are certain counties in Maryland Carroll County, for one, there's police everywhere. I mean, I'm always.
That is true.
But are
They're
State
everywhere.
police.
but none of
And
the
they're no joke.
none of the beltway
No joke.
none of the beltway goes through Calvert County.
No.
But if
No.
you get on interstate, I can't think of any interstate around here where you will. I don't care what the traffic is either. They will go 100 miles an hour. And the thing that gets me the most is not that people will do that if you let them, but that is different. That you might have seen it
You're
on occasion,
putting people in harm's way.
but you,
Yes.
whatever the policing mechanism was, or it could be people's willingness to do it or not, you did not see people driving 100 miles an hour every time you got on the road 10 years ago.
COVID.
You just
COVID.
didn't.
I was
COVID
just
did a
going
big
to
thing.
say, it was COVID. There was no policing, and
I've read stats about that.
It was a wild time out there
Like
driving.
during the peak time of COVID.
Oh my God, it was
they have
nuts.
it like NTSB and DOT statistics that injuries and fatalities did go way up on a per capita basis during COVID because people figure, well, they're not going to pull us over anyway.
Yeah,
So
Brad just said here they hit construction workers. We just had that big thing on
yes,
695.
that was a proof.
And it was over 2 cars going over 100 miles an hour, playing cat and mouse, I guess, is what they said. But how many times have you driven down the road? And I don't know if you guys are experiencing the same thing if you're outside of Maryland, but how many times driving down the road do I have to pump my brakes and stop, or there's going to be a major incident because somebody else is coming behind me at 110, 120 miles an hour, and they're coming through between the car that's beside me, and I have to hit my brakes, or they can't get through, and it's going to be a problem. So why is it that when we're talking about this, why are we having this conversation? Why isn't there? I mean, if you think about that, that's reckless endangering. Right? Why?
you only live once. The ancient Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. You kind of think about that. You only see what you see in your lifetime with your own eyes. And you kind of have to make judgments. I find myself, you're making judgments constantly, especially as you get older. You're like, am I getting older? Am I like getting to be the old curmudgeon and, I just can't keep up with the times? Or how much are things really changing, like societally changing and seemingly permanent or going in that direction without faltering or slowing down? And then if you do, like I said, I do corporate bankruptcy work, and you think about risk profiles and people's type of behavior. And it's not just how are people willing to drive.
You're beating on the table. Yeah.
Sorry. How are people willing to drive? But how
These rookies.
far are you willing to bend when you're filling out a loan application? If you're willing to drive 100 miles an hour, do you think somebody will be willing to overestimate their ink? There aren't consequences. And I'm not like advocating we need more of a police totalitarian state, but over the past, I'd really say since COVID, but now we've been out of COVID for a little while, and I still see it continuing, I seem to be noticing a very large trend towards a lot of risky and you could call it selfish, behavior. I mean, I talked to a lot of friends and for insurance, you buy insurance.
All right, now you're
you buy
rambling.
insurance, you get bank
Next.
loans. What if everybody committed insurance fraud? There would be no insurance.
Now we're talking about insurance fraud.
Well, but it's the same thing.
You just told me people aren't paying insurance. Today you said that people don't pay we've already talked about the tags. People are driving around with expired tags.
That is one
Nobody
thing that I
cares
notice
about
all
that,
the time.
Right?
That's one thing that I notice all the time. I tell this to friends and colleagues, and they'll say, "Oh, you're crazy. You really drive around looking at people's license plates." Well, you're driving down the road, you just kind of notice. Different states are different. In Maryland, you have a month sticker and a year sticker. And when they expire, your tags are dead. And if your insurance might not be valid at that point either. And it plays into all kinds of things, including the finance industry. And you talk about auto repos. If they're not enforcing tag stickers, that means they're not really enforcing having a current registration on your car. One of the main mechanisms for auto loan companies to get their car back is it's only going to be good for you until you have to renew your registration. And in Maryland, that's 2 years. So if they're not enforcing tag stickers and you stop paying for your car, you can keep that car and use that car until someone physically comes and takes it from you.
Just like you can live in your house.
Well, that's true too.
You can live in your house for rent-free.
But you see these things breaking down, and you just think, if especially you work in the kind of industry that I do and in the fields that I do, you realize that it is all interconnected. Well, how are the banks going to get their car back if the people can just drive them on dead tags forever? They're not going to get them back as quickly. They're just not. Because repoing is a whole different thing than when you go to renew your tag and the MBA says, well, there's an active bank lien on your car. You can't get your registration, therefore you can't drive it. Then you're going to be like, oh, we'll give it back to the bank. That doesn't happen anymore.
Well,
what do you think?
What you're going to do is you're just going to not renew your registration.
Correct.
Like what's happening. All right, do we have any questions for
We
Cliff?
do.
Especially for Cliff.
Uh-oh.
We do.
Uh-oh.
All right, we're going to start with this
Hi,
one.
woman on the left.
Hello.
Holly Rock.
Question. Dave Ramsey said it's never been a better time to buy or sell a home. What should I be doing with my current debts, loans, so I can go buy a house within the next month?
Well, Johnny Fly, what's up? How are you, Johnny? Why are you asking us if you're watching Dave Ramsey? Mm-hmm. What do you do with your current debts and loans? You pay them off. That's what Dave Ramsey says. But when we're talking about not a better time to buy or sell a home, look, I've never been one to come out and say, don't buy a home. If you're planning on, a lot of housing is lifestyle. I mean, when people buy a 5,000 square foot house that has 10-foot ceilings and 3 and 4 car garages, do they really care about when a good time to buy a house is? I mean, they're overspending anyway. Any luxury home, in my opinion, is overpriced because what you put in your house, if you go out and you spend $250,000 renovating a kitchen, that's a lifestyle. Do you need that? No. Do you need $100,000 in appliances? No, nobody does. I don't care how much money you have, you don't need it. So when we're talking about buying a house, a lot of what I'm referring to are the first-time buyers that are stressing themselves out, getting themselves in debt, and putting themselves in a position to where they're going to potentially lose their home or not have much of a life, and being strapped to their house. And there's nothing worse than that. So when we talk about selling a home, I think right now is a great time to sell your house, because if I believe that we're going to see a major downturn, I think it's only a matter of time that it happens. We aren't going to see a major increase in wages. Look, in California, there's all kinds of jokes out there, but maybe it's not a joke about a $50 Big Mac, because they have this legislation proposed for a $50 an hour minimum wage, which is preposterous. I mean, what does that mean? It means that businesses will get rid of employees left and right, and they will just go robotic and through automation, and it's going to crush jobs. And employers are just, these big corporations have the money they can raise the money to do it. They don't even have to use their money. If they're on the stock market, they just create money. They take money from you. And, so when we're looking at practicality speaking, I don't think these numbers work. I mean, when we're looking at 6 to 9 times earnings to afford a house, it's not sustainable.
If someone has a house that they think they might want to get out from under within the next 3 years, in my personal opinion, I would say try to sell it ASAP. But that's me. It's a semi-educated opinion, but I like the expression, don't listen to what people say, watch their feet. I know a lot of people talking about selling their house, but there's not a lot of inventory on the market, so, if you're going to sell, that's talking about selling it and listing it are two different things. But I think another factor I hear a lot of people talking about is it seems like generally people want to be more mobile, or at least not. People are really analyzing, do I really want, and that could be part of the life phase that I'm in my age, but people asking themselves, do I really want to be here in 10 years? Is this, buying a house is a long-term decision. I mean, we live right in between Baltimore and DC. It's definitely has, it's good. This area has some really good things about it, quality of life wise, but Let me ask you. Let me ask both of you.
You just said you wanted to leave Maryland.
Well, how
You
about
said you'd leave in a second.
Well, what do you say?
I say the same thing.
Okay. Well, I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. But here's what I want to ask both of you. You're both from here, right?
No, originally no.
But you've lived here a while.
I have.
She's from a worse affordable place on the planet.
All right, D.C., both Baltimore and D.C., no city's perfect. Me and people that I knew used to pretty regularly, for entertainment value, go to both D.C. and Baltimore. Do you ever do that anymore? I mean, what's your honest answer? Do you?
No.
Do your friends? Do you know many people?
No.
If I'm going to go out to dinner, we're going to go spend the evening out.
Somebody was just shot in broad daylight at the Inner Harbor.
Well, dude, that's every day.
It's
I shouldn't
the
say
Inner
every
Harbor.
day.
I mean, it's
And then you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, is the media hyping this? And you're like, no.
they're not hyping it because they don't want you to know. So of what you're seeing, they're.
But my point is, the employment, the government being close to here is a big thing. If you don't work for the government, so many people are 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from the government in their professional businesses that exist because they're close to. You don't realize it if you don't talk to people and know where they all work. There's a lot of stuff here because it's close to the government, whether it's 1 or 2 degrees of separation away. But one of the quality things of this area is, one, you got the bay and the water, if you like water, in those 2 cities. I mean, people like metropolises. There's music, for all the reasons that people go to cities. Nobody goes to either of those cities anymore. Sorry, I'm pounding the table.
We get some duct tape.
But is that true? Look, I know it's true because I know you know this. You know it's true. I know it's true.
I was born in Baltimore, and my dad was a Baltimore City police officer. Retired from the police force. He was in the Army prior to that.
It's different.
It is certainly different. I mean, I love Baltimore. I love the city. I think it's a
I
beautiful
hate saying
city.
that.
We talk about a lot of the issues that Baltimore, a lot of the corruption.
You put DC
I mean, it's
right in there with it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and I think that what happens is, and you have to, a couple things that you have to do. Number one, you have to encourage investor activity in these cities, because if the investors pull out, and that is not just from a building standpoint, right? It is including our businesses. So when you talk about not supporting investors, not supporting local businesses, they leave. And what happens when they leave? The local jobs leave with it. And, we have 100,000, maybe even more board ups in Baltimore City. You took pictures of it. You went down there. You were down there.
I don't take pictures of things out in public like that. I do it
Yeah,
all the
you
time.
do.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, you do.
I was amazed because it was right downtown in the financial district. I know Baltimore pretty well. I grew up around here, but I've lived away at different times in my adult lifetime. But I know Baltimore. I know there's always been parts that you better be on your P's and Q's if you go that direction. But I'm talking about right in the financial main commercial part of Baltimore. Every small building right in that area yesterday when I was down there is boarded up. And they're ones that would be.
And what did I tell you? You haven't been down there often because it's everywhere. You were surprised.
In that area.
You were
I'm
surprised.
talking about Stiefel, which used to be
matter what
Stiefel
area.
Nicholas. It's the biggest, most prominent finance firm that's based in Baltimore.
Doesn't
or
matter.
that's in Baltimore. Right next to their building. And
There are-
courthouses around there. The type of building that used to would be like an awesome mid-sized law firm office, accounting office. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants to go there.
There
Not for work.
are houses down there. So I had the big conversation. So we had a mayor, Sheila Dixon. She's running again. She had started this dollar home program. I mean, for a period of time, and I'm not endorsing
I think
anybody.
they're doing that now, though. Aren't they doing that now?
They're doing it now.
Yeah.
So we had somebody call up and say, "How do I get involved with the dollar house program?" I said, "Call the city."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good luck. The issue is, and I own property in the city. I had rentals, many of them, in Baltimore City. I sold them as fast as I could in 2021. And it wasn't that, for any other reason, that I had great properties and I had great tenants. But it was the issue is that they weren't very friendly to investors. And if you want to see an area be developed, who's going to buy a dollar house and fix it up? I mean, you can literally in these houses, you can see the full sky. There's no roof on the houses. And a lot of these houses, there are actual trees growing up. I think you were with me one time. We were driving down there. I was like, you see these trees growing up in there? I mean, they're literally growing up in the side of these beautiful homes, beautiful architecture. Mm-hmm. They don't even make architecture anymore like they do in some of these old cities. The problem is, a prime example, number one, I couldn't get tenants out. I had professional tenants every now and then that would really make life rough on me and everybody around them. And it would take 7-9 months to get them out of the house. And then the houses were destroyed. And I can remember going to court and the judge and just saying, lad, serve them again. Let's give them another chance. They're not here. Well, I did everything I was supposed to do. I posted, sent them first class, sent them certified, did all these things. Why am I being penalized? Why am I here right now in front of you using my time? And you're going to say the defendant's not here, my tenant who hasn't paid me that 4 times before I was in court with that didn't pay me. And finally I got paid and I couldn't take possession of my property because it wasn't enough eviction processes. And now all of a sudden the judge said, you know what, let's maybe they didn't get they didn't get the notice. Let's do it again. I'm like, great, let's do it again. So I read the writing on the wall. And what happened through the pandemic, I had, one tenant that didn't pay me and never did. But regardless, I remember I was getting fines every trash day. The inspector was going by I had 8 units. The inspector was going by my units and on this one street and was writing me $30 or $35 violations per unit because the trash cans, if there was a trash can, didn't have a lid on it. So what did I do? I said, okay, no problem. Well, apparently they need new trash cans. So I went and I bought them new trash cans while I was getting it again. The trash can lids were gone. I don't know. Maybe they were cooking something on them or something. Maybe it was a barbecue. I don't know. But what happened was then they said, well, the lids blew away. Okay, well, let's fix that. So I tethered the lids to the trash cans. And then the trash people wouldn't take my trash because they said it was hazardous. Because when they go to dump the can, the lid would hit them, and it was too risky, too dangerous. This is the kind of stuff that is going on that prevents investors from wanting to be there. So you can come up with all the dollar houses that you want if you're not going to have support and be able to, build the way and make money the way that you should be able to. If you're an investor, you're not going to go there and it's not going to work. So, and I'm not picking on Baltimore City. Again, I love the city, but the harbor, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's not the tourist attraction that it used to be.
And just so you do agree that you've noticed a perceptible difference that for entertainment reasons, people do not go to the cities. And we were just in Portland and Seattle. We don't live there to see if we notice a difference or not, but it was, especially Portland, it was creepy.
That was crazy, wasn't it?
Creepy.
Well,
creepy.
we were.
I had been to Portland in the time I lived out in the Bay Area, California, but that was an eye-opener. And same, we haven't lived around there, but it hadn't been like that for that long, or the city wouldn't even be there anymore. I mean, it was something else.
But you know what is amazing to me? Number one, the homelessness I couldn't even fathom. So when we were in Oregon, I thought that was worse. When we were going down the highway and what appeared to be mile stretches of tents, and which is sad. I mean, it's terrible.
If someone told me what it looked like, I would have thought they were exaggerating.
Yes.
I really would have.
And what did they tell us while we were there when we were talking to people? They said what? They said, it's a lot better than it used to be.
During COVID. I mean, literally down the freeways, people, tents, hundreds of them along the sides of the freeway. And I'm not side streets. They were there too, but I'm talking freeway shoulders.
No, you got to talk to them.
Sorry.
You're leaning back.
But anyway, that's
rookies.
People. So that we're talking about the housing market, and it's a good time to sell your house. When that's like a big draw and a big reason why people lived around here, and a lot of people work remote, I hear a lot of people talking about, do I really want to be here in 5 years, 10 years? And again, you do got to factor in your age, because I know a lot of people whose kids are out of the house now, so they have more flexibility in doing that. But I hear a lot of people bantering around with ideas about where else they might like to live.
That is a question. We do have the question, is it a bad time to sell?
I think it's a great time to sell. I mean, so when do you want to sell? You want to sell when inventory is the lowest. I mean, you don't want to wait until inventory rises. You know, we've spoke of the baby boomer wave that is coming. We have 30 million baby boomers that over the next, I mean, even if you stretch that out to be 10 years of liquidation or downsizing or moving somewhere or passing on or whatever, life attrition. Basically, if you take even another 3 million houses and dump it on, I mean, that is per year. That is a ton of homes. When we look at the average or the existing home sales being less than 4 million last year,
I'm surprised there hadn't been more of that. The boomers already listing. 'Cause I hear and read about professionals forecasting that's going to be a major flow of the houses coming on the market. But when you think about how much appreciation somebody who's owned their home for 30, 40 years, I read statistics about how the biggest asset that a lot of people have, it's not their 401ks, it's not their pension, it's the equity they have in their house. And if they were seeing what I was seeing around here, I would want to sell my house now. And it seems to me like I do look at houses on a case-by-case basis, sometimes out of curiosity for myself, just people, friends selling. Unless the house is markedly overpriced, it seems like they're going quick. And it seems like the ones that, a lot of them are priced crazy because people think, well, it's a crazy market, I might as well try it. I'll be happy if I get it and happy if I don't. So I see some sit, but if it's anywhere reasonable, they're going quick.
Well, and some of the issues that we do see with the people that aren't selling, and a lot of this is the silent generation, the boomers are a little too young, but we are seeing where they're moving in their family into the home. So we are seeing where, maybe one of the parents has passed, the other parent is, maybe they're in their 80s right now. And what we're seeing is the kids are taking over the house. So there's a consolidation that's taking place. And what is going on is that, even with the boomers, they're making their plans as well. So whether it's building accessory dwelling units on their property to where they're moving into the garage or the shed in the backyard and letting their kid come in, or we're seeing where multi-generations are just buying one larger house. Several of the houses that I sold in the past year that we've, as a brokerage, have sold, have been to people that are multi-generational housing. And in one situation, I had the dad living in the basement, the mom living in an in-law suite in the first floor, and then the kids, their children and grandkids living in the main part of the house. And this is something that we're starting to see as like the norm, which I don't think is bad. I mean, I think that we got into this society of, less people living in a big home. And, I don't think it is bad that we have multi-generational. I think there's a lot of good with that, if you can live with your family members.
I mean, do you think that the lack of foreclosure proceedings or the foreclosure process actually coming to fruition, do you think that's a market difference in the supply not hitting the...
100%.
100%.
Yeah. I think it's huge. I mean, when you have over 1 million, I don't know what the number is now, but it was over 1 million households took advantage of the forbearance or remodification program. We've also seen tens of thousands of loans already that Fannie Mae has bundled up, non-performing notes, non-performing loans, or reperforming loans that they were in default and that they are now paying their mortgage, whether they had 30% of their principal balance taken, reduced. Imagine this. Imagine having a loan for $400,000 and having 30% of that, $120,000 of your loan extracted from your payment and cast on the back end in a second mortgage, interest-free, that you don't have to pay until, number one, you pay off all of your loan, 30 years or 40 years. Some of the modifications were taken to 40-year loans. And you don't have to pay that off for 30 years, let's just say, or unless you sell. Now, if you take a $400,000 note and take off $120,000, even if the interest rate now was at 7.5% instead of 4%, you just took $120,000 out of your payment and cast it to the back end. Now, let me ask you something. What does that accomplish? Well, it keeps the people in their house, but can the people afford to fix their house when something breaks? Can they afford to if you're not paying your mortgage payment, how are you coming up with $25,000 to put a roof on the house? How are you coming up with $25,000 to put a new heating and air system in the house? How are you coming up with anything, to enable you to keep that house in good working order? So what is it accomplishing? In my opinion, we're kicking the can down the road. The people, a large percentage of them are probably going to default because they can't do that. And as a result of that, they've sold those loans for, a fraction of what the homes are worth to incentivize somebody to jumping in there and taking on that liability of that non-performing loan or reperforming loan. Now, I'm not saying that I'm all for kicking people to the street and evicting them out of their houses, but I'm also not for lowering the standard for the credit standard for people to buy either. So one of the things that people say a lot of times, they go, well, look, this is not 2007 or 2008. You're right. It's not. It's 2024. But we see a lot of the same mistakes happening. Okay, we don't have the liar loans, as they call them, or the no-doc loans, but we have FHA insuring these homes with people that have lower credit scores and not much money down. So when we're doing that, what are we really saying? We're saying if you buy a house, you don't need to have a lot of money because we want to push home ownership, but where's the education of whether it's the right thing to do?
Well, and then don't you think that would whet the appetite of people who are on borderline affordability, thinking just get in it, and once we're in it, we'll figure it out and everything will be okay.
Well, for
right?
some,
we're not gonna be told, knock on the door, it's time to leave. That's gonna change your whole risk equation when you think about buying a house you might not be able to afford. I mean, is it not? It incents risky behavior on the purchase end for borderline people, which not everybody is a borderline affordability, but a lot of people are, and how much house they buy. And, I just see, you notice all the interconnections, that the decisions that people make and are standing in the global financial system, the world reserve currency, how we run our own operations financially in this country. And I noticed a lot of things changing. I like the lawyer that you had on from California, who he was a foreclosure lawyer, wasn't he?
Some people were going to subscribe to your channel if you started one, but now they're not.
What? Right? Isn't that what he was?
Some people didn't like him.
The guy. Oh, okay. Well, he mentioned, and I'm noticing this because I've worked in this field, and that you notice grand things changing. People don't go to the cities anymore. There's some of it's small stuff. People drive crazy, but contract law is changing. Like you notice that the underlying precepts of the legal system are changing, and you see it with student loans. You see, and that is a tectonic shift that I think if you do not attach the proper weight to it, it's a lot bigger than it would look on.
We talked about student loans earlier.
Who did, you and I?
You and I.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
And what?
You were trying to justify how much the coaches make, the football coaches.
Oh yeah.
Huh?
No, well.
I mean, how many millions of dollars a college football coach is worth? What you said was you said that they should be more transparent in saying that that's what's funding the school. And I said, that's not what's funding the school.
I don't think that's exactly what I said. I think they should be more transparent and say we have a professional sports league that runs in parallel with our university systems. And maybe it helps fund it, maybe it doesn't. But can you say that where you have a university where the football or basketball coach, don't fact check me, they're tens of millions of dollars, the contracts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Some of them are probably over 100.
Michigan.
And that is so many multitudes greater than your best, most tenured and experienced professor there. Is that an educational institution? Or is that running a semi-professional sports league in tandem with what you're calling a university system.
I would love to see. It's amazing because all of the real estate boom that surrounds these colleges. When I saw what was happening with the pandemic, and I'm not. I mean, I'm for formal education. There is no formal education, however, that guarantees your success into the workforce, or guarantees that you're going to make a lot of money. Self-education really has a lot to do with that, because there are a lot of successful people that didn't go to college. And, so I think that when we're pushing our students or our young people into going hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt and enticing them that they don't have to pay this college debt, that, by the way, that they're going to pay for the rest of their life, a lot of them, and now they're financing it into their mortgages and their loans, and they're going to pay for it dearly, 3 times, 4 times the amount that they actually owed. And what we're doing is we're pushing them into these expensive life decisions when they're 17 years old. I mean, my gosh, I don't know many people that know what they want to do when they're 17. So we're pushing them into this expensive, collegiate decision. And one of the things, I mean, these kids are graduating and they're not even going into the field of study that they graduated in. And I don't even know how much it even matters anymore. I mean, everything, there's so much fraud going on in the world today that, maybe they could even, I don't even, does an employer even check? I mean, maybe you could just print out or say you went somewhere. I mean, do they actually check? I don't know that they do. I'm not encouraging that. But I'm saying that we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars that we don't have, going to college, and we're coming out with something that we don't, in a field that we don't even like, or we don't even know if we like it, because we're 17 years old when we decided, or they're switching their majors. Now they're going 5 years, right, to get their undergrad. But when the pandemic happened and I saw people studying from home and on the classroom and on the computer, I actually got excited, because I said, maybe this is something that will knock this bullcrap off of this outrageous college tuition, and that maybe, and then you think about it, you go, all of the development, if you looked at the cranes, that you couldn't get a crane for years back in, before the pandemic, and well before the pandemic, you couldn't get a crane because all of these major universities had them all around the university, and they were building these expensive apartments because they knew a couple things. Well, these kids are spending a lot of money. If their parents are going to sign on the dotted line to guarantee their leases, they were getting year-long leases. They weren't just letting them there for the school year. They had to commit for a year. And they were giving them all the amenities that they would have from home. They had to have the theater room. They had to have the computer room. They had to have, the volleyball or the pool and the dog parks and all these things, right? So they built these lavish apartment buildings. And I'm thinking to myself, this is great. This is going to have a major adjustment and correction, which I thought it should. Because when should a college kid live in a $3,200 or $3,400 apartment, even if it is with 4 of them all together? That's insanity, right? I mean, you're there for an education, not to have volleyball court. Now, you guys that went to college and had all these things, you're probably saying that you don't like me very much right now, and that's fine. I'm entitled to my opinion. But the point is that you are being misled. Because that's not what life's about, right? So why are we setting all of this up that if you don't get this, you're substandard? And if you do get this, this is the way life is going to be for you, because guess what? It's not. And that's why we saw millions of millennials that now can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford their rent. They're moving home with mom and dad. So what do? We sent them to college. They're $250,000 in debt. They learned how fun it was to live in an apartment off of campus, and now they're living with mom and dad in the basement. So,
I'd say, generally speaking, like a liberal arts undergrad degree, if you're trying to be a doctor or a lawyer where there's regulatory things involved, it's different, but they are less desired, less required in general by employers now, and they're way more expensive. So
they're
going the opposite directions.
They're going to be really less required when the employers are saying, I'm only hiring independent contractors.
Yeah.
And you no longer have a job.
They are if you research it and read about it, they are definitely becoming less required. Just to say I have an undergraduate degree, I have a BS, even if it's in finance or marketing, something where you really might have learned something nuts and bolts material, they're not as. You used to be, you pretty much had to have one for a very large percentage of jobs, not so much anymore.
But it goes also, and I did not mean to interrupt you
No.
there, but it goes the same as, getting admissions for college. You don't need to have SATs. There are a lot of
That's changing.
schools that's not a requirement, which
That's
Find it.
relatively new.
yeah. But it's been going on for a few years, and now some schools, even during COVID, they decided not to go that route. But then now, I think the following next year, whatever, they're requiring it. But I thought that was interesting.
How many times have you know a lot of people with college age kids? How many times have you heard this? Well, my son or daughter majored in such and such, and we didn't find out until the semester before they graduated. You can't get a job in that field unless you have the follow-on graduate degree.
Yeah.
Social work. And they're like, wait a minute, you didn't know that before you spent?
Well, you know what it is that until recently, you'd get a job and your employer would incentivize you to go back to school, and that they would make that part of your part of your career. And now, if you don't have these certifications behind your name, and you don't have a master's in certain fields, I'm not talking about PhD. I'm just talking about they want further education to get these jobs where they're making a lot less than they should make.
Let me put it like this.
And can't afford to
as
buy
a general
anything.
statement, as an employer, I'd take some tangible work experience over today's undergraduate degree all day long, every day.
100%.
As a general statement.
Yeah.
So that's a big change too. The university system. That's another of the big ones that me and you talk about. Like, all right, things are changing, and what's changing? The cities are changing. The university system's changing. General type of rule of law is changing, and you can talk about all kinds of things where you see it.
Well, you want to make some crazy money, go to school to be an electrician.
Well,
or
dude,
a plumber.
I know this guy.
Or a heating and air contractor.
I have a couple automotive related businesses, and I know a lot of people that have high end cars, like multi-100,000, just people buy those kind of cars. And this one guy who I know, he's a roofer. He's got a big roofing company, and he had this McLaren, and it wasn't an inexpensive McLaren. It was like a $500,000 car. And I knew that he had owned a roofing company, and he's pretty young. And I saw his car in person, and his license plate, personalized license plate, said GED. And I said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." I'm like, you got your GED, and look how far you've gone, owning a roofing company. He said, "Oh no." He goes, "Oh no, I'm sorry." His license plate said GED LOL. I said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Yeah, He owns a big roofing company. He said, "Oh no, you don't understand. That was my parents telling me I better get my GED, and I never even did that. That's the LOL." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, look, if you're a go-getter."
Let's not tell people to quit high school.
I'm not doing that. But I would tell people of the beginning university type age, I would look pretty hard at, is it a smart move right now? And the parents, I'm telling you, good tangible work experience. Even if you end up going to undergraduate school, get some work experience.
I hear you. Let's take another question.
Okay, we've got a super chat here. Any predictions on BLS CPI numbers and subsequent reactions?
Well, let's take a look here. I made a little note about the Fed. So he was just, like I said, Stanford Business School, speech on April 3rd. They're not planning on lowering rates anytime soon, maybe later this year. However, rate is probably at its peak. So when they're talking about CPI numbers, they're excluding, as always, energy and food prices, which we know are way up. But I do want to say, because I think that the Fed is looking at the same backward data that we're all looking at. I don't think there's any inside information going on. But something interesting that Powell said regarding the FOMC. He said, in the case of the Fed, independence is essential. And what he was talking about was, because we're really wondering now, how much political pressure Powell is getting from the White House in an election year. And Powell was very clear in saying that that doesn't play into their decision. Said in the case of the Fed, independence is essential to our ability to serve the public. The record shows that independent central banks deliver better economic outcomes. So, talking about CPI numbers,
He said
if inflation was so out of control, why didn't the Fed do something sooner to control it?
Is that a question?
If you would like to answer it.
They definitely waited too long. They've been waiting too long for 15 years. The rates have been artificially low for over 15 years. I would say most people worth their salt with an economic or finance background would agree.
Yeah.
Huh? I mean,
I agree.
But when they were at zero because of COVID, look, you hear this all day long. I just sound like I'm a bobblehead repeat. They waited too long and then they went too fast. Why'd Silicon, you know why Silicon Valley went out of business? Because their bond portfolio deteriorated so much because the rates went up so quick. You look at these, you're like, I don't got the chops to be on the Federal Reserve, but you do scratch your head sometimes. Somebody like Danielle might have the chops. She scratches her head too. I don't know. Why'd they wait so long?
So, talking about the BLS, the labor statistics, the Fed also said that 265,000 new jobs, and we said this earlier, on average per month were added for the last 3 years in a row. So I guess,
But how often do you hear any federally generated statistic, do they restate it? I don't care if it's the inflation number, the employment number, and Peter talks about this all the time. Nobody even if they're going to restate them literally like clockwork 30 days after they issue it, so my answer to that question is no. I do not have any specific insider insights into either of those.
Well, I think the predictions are, at least for me, is that unemployment is going to skyrocket. I think that we are just seeing the tail end or the lag effects of some of the most stimulus that we've ever seen, especially for our businesses. I mean, you and I have talked about that many times, but I think that we're going to see unemployment skyrocket all across the board, and I think businesses are already starting to see that. They're getting slow. Things are slowing down. I mean, we can only pretend for so long, but when we see that business is not coming into the stores, we see that. I just had a settlement today. I pulled into this office building that was not very impressive, and the parking was terrible. Obviously, they're not busy, because if they were, their customers the people settling would have to walk, a quarter of a mile to get to the building. There was no place to park. It was atrocious. And when I went inside, I said, hey, I've never been to your office before. And she said, well, we moved, sign of the times, we're downsizing. And I'm like, well, I wasn't at your office before. I don't even know who they are, but as far as the title company, and I've been in business for quite some time, going into title companies. But my point is that they were dead slow. I was an hour late for settlement. Nobody was in there. I walked right in. But she had told me, hey, by the way, Todd, I have a slot at 1 o'clock. Well, what she didn't say is I have a slot at 1 o'clock, a slot at 1:15, a slot at 1:30, a slot at 1:45, a slot at 2 o'clock. Just come on in and sign anytime. My point is, people are slow. They are slowing down. Businesses are slow, and they're feeling the effects now, the lag effect, and now we're going to see it. And this is the worst time of the year. Usually the spring, stores are rocking, businesses are rocking. People feel good. They're outside. The weather's breaking. If you guys, live in one of those perfect weather climates, well, sorry for your luck. But around here, the weather's breaking. It's getting nice. We don't have to be bundled up and have hats on and all kinds of stuff. Melissa likes her hats and scarves.
I do.
But places are slow.
I know a lot of people that own all kinds of businesses, and it is pretty uniform in saying I don't care if they're doctors or own a car dealership, home contractors, electricians, plumbers, they're all slow.
They're slow. Yeah. So I don't know. You guys can drop in the comments. If you have a business, are you slow? Are you feeling the effects? I mean, be honest. I mean, part of it is I feel like sometimes people, they don't want to admit that they're going through a slow period. But right now, it's happening.
I've heard a lot about it in the past 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Like a lot more in the
Look,
past
we
6
just ordered a
weeks.
pizza and some wings tonight just so we could grab something to eat before the podcast. And it was $45 for 16-inch cheese, pizza,
That doesn't surprise me.
and 12 wings. $45. I mean, in California, it's probably $145.
Is that just
but,
a,
I mean,
is that
it's
a
just-
general inflation comment?
Yeah, it's saying that if I didn't have to order the pizza, I wouldn't have. If you didn't have to eat. But I felt like I needed to feed you because you made the trek in here
But
tonight.
were they slow? Did they say could you get it delivered in 30 minutes? Right.
I don't think they had enough delivery pizza.
It is a Monday
people 'cause it
night,
was
so it's
cold.
probably a slow pizza.
I think
night.
that's the problem. I think that there was not enough delivery people, and which, makes everything slow because you're not going to get what you need. So I think that's part of
You're
the
going to get
problem.
cold pizza
You're gonna
for
get
$45.
I was talking to one of my sales rep for a business of mine that I buy a commercial product for.
Are you getting tired?
No, and we were talking about pricing. We're
Don't
like,
start
all right, we're like,
banging on the table.
we're like, all right. If business is slow and you're hearing this across the board in this industry, why are the prices still high? Well, your inputs and your overhead prices are high. That's a part of it. And we got in this conversation about, and this guy's a salesperson, so he deals with accounts all day, talks to them intimately about their pricing and blah, blah, blah. He said, in his opinion, in this industry I'm talking about, when people get slow and they get a call, they try and hit a home run. They don't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm kind of the other way. If things are slow, I might bargain down to get what I can to have something. He said, nope. He goes, I noticed the other direction. If they get a call, they think I'm swinging for the fences because I'm getting so few calls. I want to milk it for as much as I can. I thought that was supply demand equation kind of interesting. You'd think it would go the other way, but hey, he said he knows it's true.
Susan's business is thriving. She's a dermatologist. It's probably because of all the stress that everybody's breaking out. But
And you know what's funny about that? I said, I don't care if they're a doctor. My one friend of mine, I was just talking to him yesterday, and his wife is a dermatologist.
Really?
And he was telling me that is a underserved area in medicine, is what he was telling me. He said, I hear it from people all the time, if you got to go to a dermatologist, you can't get an appointment. Dermatologist specifically.
TJ says he had to wait 15 minutes in line to buy guitar strings in Reno today. Was that because there were no employees or because the store was busy?
I had to buy a battery yesterday, a car battery, and I did have to wait a good amount of time for that. So
To get it put in your car, to get it checked out.
just to check out
Where were you buying it?
Big Mac, $10.
locally.
A meal or just a sandwich? Come on.
Probably just a sandwich. It costs more if you just get the sandwich.
Is that real? Is a Big Mac $10?
I don't eat.
I don't even know
eat
the last
fast
time I was
food,
at
but-
McDonald's. I don't either. I don't
Poll,
either.
poll, poll. What about our poll?
Yeah, let's do the poll.
Thanks, Tim. All these rants, man. We hash browns in Florida, $2. Wow,
That's
Here
a
we
deal.
go. All right, all the above. What seems to be worse now? Societal breakdown, inflation, or political divide? Let's talk about political divide, shall we? That's
boy.
a slippery slope.
All right, if you're going there,
Okay,
you
we
want
talked
you want to give a preamble to it?
We talked about it.
Well, I say it's all interrelated. I mean, when you see this, if you try and look objectively, if you can do that, the things that are going on and the lawfare, how could there not be political divide? I mean, does it seem to you like there's a serious concerted effort so certain people can't vote for who they want to? Does it seem like that? You're the one that brought it up.
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I think Mike Maloney said it best today. We were just talking about it. And it's like, I feel like, well, for one, I feel one of the problems is that we only have a two-party system. But I think that what has really become is that it's more about people not looking at issues so much as that they're looking at like who they dislike the most. And I think that I don't think it's a Democrat or Republican issue that we have at hand. I think that it goes much deeper than that. And I think that what we really need to do is somehow try and get back to some basics and hold the elected officials more accountable for what they promised to get into the office in the first place. And, to me, that it's like, I feel like we go through these campaign phases and we hear all these grandiose things of how great things are going to be. And then it doesn't seem like anything, in my opinion, gets done. And I feel like it's less of, I see a lot of people just wanting to just give up and just say, I don't even want to have an opinion on, I just want to be in my own space. I just want to, work a job, be able to afford things, live my life, live a simple, life. So I think that in general, I don't know how people feel or whether they're happy with either party. I think it's more of a social divide, if anything else. I think people just want to be angry at the other person. You certainly can't voice your opinion.
Well, that's
because if you do, I feel like
it's so toxic. It's so toxic. The topic, you cannot have an objective opinion about it amongst a lot of people who I know. And if you try and make an objective statement that I don't think there's a sound legal basis for what they're doing to this person or that person, it's so toxic to say, oh, well, you're this type. You're this type of voter. You're that. It's like, no, I'm trying to look at it objectively. And if you have a legal background at all, and you look at the types of statutes that they're using to literally try and tell such a large percentage of the country, we're not even going to allow you the opportunity to vote for who it is you're pretty clear you want to vote for. That is different. I've never seen that before.
I have to say,
not even close.
I have to say that I don't think that we've ever been as divided as we are right now, at least in my adult life that I can remember paying attention to this. Because there's a certain part of me that, always said, well, it didn't matter who the president of the United States was, because, they have such limit anyway, it seems. It's more important who your local politicians are that are going to directly affect your area that you live and things like that. But I always ran with the mindset of running my businesses. I just want to run a good business, be an employer and provide as much as I can. But when the regulations and the overstepping don't make sense, it becomes very frustrating. And the housing market is a perfect example of that. And I know, prior to this administration, a Baltimore local here, Dr. Ben Carson, and Ben Carson, he's a genius. He's a very smart guy. He has a book. It's a fantastic book, and he was a brain surgeon here in Baltimore and famous. And he became Trump elected him Secretary of HUD, and nothing happened tremendously in the housing industry. It wasn't like there was any this revelation of, hey, now we're going to have affordable housing and we're going to cut some of this red tape and these regulations that that was a different administration. And I'm just saying that, I had a conversation with him. I was
You're talking about Ben Carson.
Yeah, I was with
I've
Ben.
I've met him also
at,
once.
at an event, and we were talking about it, and I said, he asked me, he said, well, what's your opinion on the housing market? And I said, As far as what? He said, affordability, and this was back then. I said, look, it's not easy to build a house. There's so many regulations, so much red tape, and he agreed. And, he said that they were going to cut a lot of these regulations and red tape, and I don't think any of that's been done.
I think it's amazing that somebody like him is still willing to do a dance in the government public sector with all the the demonization that he got. And I think a lot of our smartest minds don't want anything to do with government and politics, and that's a sad state and doom loop type thing. You need your best people with the best leadership abilities willing to do at least some stint in government, and we have career politicians, and how many of the big political figures that you can name by name that's their
Do you think
career?
there should be term limits?
That's their career. They've done it their whole life. And I think that's a problem.
What else?
We have a super chat. We have a super chat here from Charles. Charles, thank you for letting us know what you're seeing. A house down the street from me is trying to sell in Corona, California for $839,000. 3 bedrooms,
Sounds cheap.
2 bath, 2,000 square feet, barely a front yard, and not much of a backyard and a pool. It does sound on the less expensive side for California, especially in that area.
Is there more to it, or is he just
No,
pointing out that
he's just-
selling point?
He's a regular contributor to the show.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah. So he likes to just
Unless
keep us
there's more
updated.
to the story, sounds like a deal in California.
Well, I think what he's saying that they're trying to sell. That's the key right there. They're trying to sell. It's a sign that people are starting to say no to home prices.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can try and
Well,
sell, but
like
I mean, the bottom line is, that may be a house that not that long ago was $400,000. So when you're looking at it, and he's describing it's not an ideal lot. This is not a great scenario. You want $1 million just about for a piece of property. Guys, do you have any idea of what your mortgage payment is going to be? $11,000. We're talking about, who can afford that?
Well, and California is an expensive place to live.
And that's why a lot of people live in their cars.
If you think it's not, try it, and you will see.
And a lot of people live in their cars because of it.
They will find a way to suck it out of you one way. It's expensive. And at the time that I lived out there, I was out there during the peak of the tech boom. It was a cool place. It had a lot to offer, quality of living wise. But when I left, I wasn't shedding any tears about leaving at the time I left. But it's expensive. It's probably more expensive now. That was 20 years ago.
I remember the first time I was there, I was in San Francisco, and this is going back probably 1989 or something, It may have been, no, it wasn't 1989. It was probably like in 90, I'm going to guess, let's see, guess. I'm going to say 1995. And I remember I was in San Francisco, and I was at the Sheraton, I think. It had like a jukebox top to it, real cool. And it's very vividly, I remember this. And I was there having lunch, I was by myself. I got a turkey sandwich, essentially, and a iced tea, and the bill came in, it was $35. And I was like, what? This is a mistake, man. So I called the waitress over and I said, I'm sorry, but I think you made a mistake here. And she said, that's no mistake. It's $35. I said, what? She said, yeah, you're at the top of the Sheraton. Look at this beautiful view. And it was not really a beautiful view anyway. I guess it was a view of Alcatraz, but it was cloudy and rainy and kind of murky, and I couldn't see it. I saw like a shadow of it, and I'm like, okay, all right, here's my credit card. I won't be back.
I haven't been to the Bay Area. I've been there once since I moved away in 2004. But a good buddy of mine who still lives out there, talked to him a couple months ago, and I said, is downtown San Fran, is it like they show on the news? And this guy loves San Francisco, lived there his whole adult life. He said, yeah, it's pretty bad. I said, you know what? If you say it's bad, I know it is because you're a major San Fran cheerleader. It's supposedly major time different. Ask Elon what he called it a zombie apocalypse.
And speaking of Elon, he actually got Twitter to work for 80% less employees.
That's the number I've heard. He fired
80% of his staff.
Or through natural attrition, 80%.
Whatever.
80% left.
And it hasn't gone down.
And
It's still active. X.
wondering what did all those people do.
I don't know.
And he couldn't get
We
a
talk
clear.
about
He couldn't
job
get a
loss.
clear answer, and he said, "Well, I know a good way to do a litmus test and figure it out. I think we can run it with 1/5 the people." And he said he got all kinds of calls from corporate CEOs telling him how impressed they were that he actually tried that.
That it succeeded.
Yeah.
What else we got? Let's talk about some more questions. If you guys want to comment your questions in here, should we take a live caller by chance?
We absolutely can. We have enough time.
Oh, we don't have enough
We don't have
headphones.
headphones.
Never mind.
Okay.
Forget it. Don't get excited.
We'll do it soon. But I do just want to pull up this comment really quick. Hi, Melissa. Thanks again for taking the time to speak with my wife today. We look forward to hearing from you. It was my pleasure. And just to remind you all, if you guys, no matter where you live across the country, we have a broker referral network, and I am happy to help and assist you where I can. And if we don't have an agent within our network in that specific area, we'll find one for you. So just be patient with that. But it's absolutely my pleasure. And if you are a real estate agent or a lender or title and you're interested in learning more about it, please send an email or call the office. But just wanted to, and it was absolutely my pleasure today speaking with your wife. But we do have another question here as well.
And while you're queuing that up, I also want to say that I am working on some courses.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some online courses that for buyers and sellers. I see a lot coming down the pike. I think that what we're going to see is with all the lawsuits, the Department of Justice just jumped back in to the NAR. They were approved to continue their investigation, and in NAR practices with all the lawsuits that are going on right now. And I think there's going to be a major paradigm shift in the housing market. I know a lot of you, some of you are happy about it, and many of you are going to try and do some things on your own. You're going to try and sell your house yourself. You're going to try and buy without an agent, especially if it comes down to buyers needing to pay for their agent. And so one of the things that I am trying to help you with is laying out buyer and seller courses that will help you navigate through the process should you decide to do it on your own. And, so I want you to be prepared. I want you to know some of the industry tips and strategies to make sure that you're not falling short should you decide to buy on your own or should you decide to sell on your own. So look for that. We're hoping that these courses will be ready soon. So I say soon. I'm hoping by June we should be rolling out these courses for you. They're going to be very affordable, and there are going to be a ton of resources for you. So if you decide that you're going to do it on your own, we'll keep you updated with those courses as well.
When you all are getting calls from potential buyers or sellers at your brokerage, are you hearing much from them on questions about the suit?
Oh,
Is anything
yeah.
different? What's different? What are you hearing from
we're-
the market?
Yeah, well, we actually we're seeing a lot more on the questions of, do I have to offer the buyer broker compensation? I think that's the number one question that we're hearing from people, and just there is no set fee or charge from broker to broker. Commissions are negotiable. You have those conversations with your agent. I think it's healthy. I'm not saying that who you pick isn't worth the money, because I would hope that they are. But you should know there should be complete transparency in where the money trail goes. And but we are seeing a lot of people that are inquiring about that, and a lot of listings that we have coming on. We're having those conversations more and more, which I think is healthy. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think a lot of people are upset. A lot of agents are upset because they have to justify. They're now, because of the news, they have to justify what they do for their money, and they should. And I think that that's a healthy thing to have happen. But I think that we're going to see more and more transactions go without representation. And I just think that it's going to be an end result. I think we're going to see a lot of agents exit the business. I think that those that weren't really making a living, I think we're going to see increases in fees, a $418 million NAR settlement. I think it's going to affect their, they said that they're not going to raise fees in 2024, and that nice of them, even though it has an NAR because it hasn't been signed off by the judge. There's still a ways to go. But regardless of that, I think that the population in general, the selling public and the buying public, is frustrated because they feel, and I've heard you say it, Cliff, you've said that it was a tax.
I said it feels like a tax.
Feels like a tax where you're buying a house and you have these extra fees that are tacked on. And it's not just from the agent. There's title fees, there's lender fees, it's a lot of fees. And, so I think that we're going to see where this is going to become more competitive. And I think we're going to see where the public is going to be smarter with how they buy and sell. And again, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to do it themselves or give it a try. And I'm here for the public. I'm here to help my audience, my listeners, and that's why I'm preparing these courses that, quite honestly, are going to be very, very detailed, and they're very educational, and it will take you through the process just about what, and probably more so than what an agent goes through in their low barrier to entry to take the state and federal exam to become a licensee. So, I still think there are going to be a lot of people out there that want agent representation, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that won't.
So if there were changes to the industry that you could implement, do you think there are things about the real estate agency and the normal course in which residential real estate is bought and sold that the market would work as far as supply and demand, the price corrections, that it would work better if the whole agency relationship was different or more efficient? It seems to me,
or non-existent,
like it makes it makes it sticky. I think it seems to me that the way the industry is, that it inhibits prices from going down as far as a market supply and demand thing as they otherwise would.
I don't think there's any question. I think that there's been NAR factual findings that people net more money with a real estate agent. I think that, when you have a trained professional that is assisting on the selling side, and I think the same goes in a buyer's market, where if you do have a normal market where you have a 6-month flow of inventory instead of 3, where we're at right now, or 3.5 months of inventory, new homes, 7 months of inventory, where we've increased from a month or a month and a quarter or a month and a half of housing inventory. If you're in a seller's market, I think it's proof that a seller will net more with the right agent, with a professional. And I think so does have a tendency to, net the seller more. And I think in a buyer's market, having a buyer's agent will help net the buyer more. But I don't think that there's anything miraculous that a buyer or seller can't do themselves if they have the proper resources and that they're educated. And that may upset a lot of my agent listeners. But the purpose is not to upset agent listeners. The purpose is to come in touch with reality. And the new reality that with the internet and training, that there is a lot of question as to whether buyers really had good representation through the last 3 years. And, I had this with an attorney. So I had a title attorney. Him and we were speaking on Saturday, a good friend of mine. And, he said to me, yeah, but Todd, he said, tell me what you honestly think about this. He said, don't you really think that buyers will be in less of a better position, in a lesser position if they didn't have buyer representation? And I said, okay, if you poll, you take the pool of buyers, but you poll the buyers and you say over the last 3 years, and if you're an agent, you have to, come on. you can't deny this. In a lot of cases, the buyer found their own home. They went to the open house on their own, and they asked you to write up the offer. And if you may have had a conversation with the buyer saying, well, how much over ask price are you going to give them? How much over appraised value are you willing to put down? Are you willing to waive everything? Because if you ask for inspection, you're not going to get the home. You're not going to get this. You're not going to get that. And one may say, was that helpful? Could a buyer have navigated that process on their own?
Or been more.
And if there was an incentive to a financial incentive with a variable rate commission, saying if they didn't have an agent, could they have bought the house for less? I think it's an argument.
That's the part I'm getting at. Could they have bought it for less if they didn't have an agent?
I mean, it's case by case, but I'm not defending the fact that if we're going to be ignorant and say that, that 100% that buyers wouldn't have been better off, I can't say that. I can't rightfully say that. And, and again, it may upset peers. But the fact of the matter is, and there are the flip side of that, agents that have worked very hard for their buyers. And so you have both cases. But the point of the matter is that I believe that this industry is going to make colossal changes. I have friends that have schools. They've never been slower. Even in the great financial crisis, people were getting the real estate license at record scale. People were diving into the business. They wanted to be part of the business. They wanted to invest. They wanted to have the edge. They wanted to, become licensed. It's not happening right now. We see less people lining up and signing up for classes. So, I mean, that's the writing on the wall. We see people that are saying that they're giving up on the industry, that they're changing fields. We've had it. We're transparent. We've had 2 agents that have said the same exact thing.
Were they selling? Did they have listings when they decided they were going to get out?
Well, they haven't gotten out.
They haven't gotten out, but they're thinking about it and they're talking about it and they're having conversations with Todd about it.
They're saying, look, I don't see this thing going well. I don't know whether I want to stay in. And when we have good people that are questioning this, these are intelligent people. They see that there's a writing on the wall. And I think when we have the affordability crisis that we have right now, all people want is to save money. They just want to own a home. They don't want to be, paying more than they should. And I could sit here in 35 years of being an employer and say that I could either disagree with them or I could say, look, we have to be something for the public. And we have to exist, and we want to exist. We're still going to sell real estate that we know. We're still going to have agents for those that want it, but we're going to come up with ways of helping people that flat out want to do it themselves. And in fact, that's the number one reason why people get a license. By the way, if we get down to brass tacks, one of the number one reasons why people become licensed is they want to buy a house. So they think that going through this education process is going to do that for them. All they really want is the information on the MLS. They want to feel like that they're getting some kind of upper hand by getting the MLS. And I think that what we're going to see out of a result of this lawsuit is we're going to see even more transparency from the MLS. And we're going to see more people providing MLS services. I've already talked to people. There are tech companies out there right now that are going to try and bypass this process and offer the sellers and buyers a platform to where they can conduct a transaction. Why wouldn't they? We would be foolish if we didn't think that
Why
that could
hasn't
happen.
that already happened? With the advent of the internet, if there was one industry where they said, where do you think it's going to cause massive disruption, I would think in the real estate brokerage industry, and it hadn't happened.
Because here's the thing, okay? And I was in the tech business.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I was.
That's when I met you.
Right. I was one of the earliest adopters of video, and had a business where I was teaching people. And when the financial crash happened, and I was building houses and doing land development and things like that. And when push came to shove back in 2007, I started seeing the writing on the wall. We started seeing it in 2005. Headline articles in the Baltimore Sun said the overpriced Baltimore housing market. At that point, as a builder, I saw where the prices were declining rapidly. We were going from 749, 750 for a house quickly to 679 and then 550. We were seeing a bloodbath happening in the new housing industry. And I remember, having a conversation with my wife and going through the early 90s, and it was some tough times when builders were going out of business. I was a contractor back then. And so what was happening is I had a conversation with my wife. I said, dude, look, I don't think I want to be in this business anymore. I could see the writing on the wall in the housing industry. And I said, this is bad. This is bad. When we started seeing the collapse, it was happening very, very fast. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. We have amnesia downturns. And when we're ignorant to them and we're not prepared for them, they're the ones that actually get hurt the most when it happens. Believe me, there wasn't one day that I was getting up in the morning and was looking in the mirror shaving saying, oh, I think today is going to be the day when the housing market crashes. Because from 1997 to 2005, it was like nothing could fail. I mean, we were negotiating on hoods of cars. Guys, this is the same thing, right? Don't think that this didn't happen before. I was building houses and having realtors, and you got to keep in mind, I wasn't a licensed real estate agent until 2005. So I was a late adopter to this. I didn't become a broker until 2017. But pre-2005, I was using agents. And believe me, when it hit the fan, it hit the fan fast. But I remember being in houses, building houses, and I did the construction myself. I had a team of people. I had a partner for a while building houses, like my brother today. And we would literally have real estate agents would come pounding on the door. And they would say, like, hey, I've got a buyer. Can they buy this house? And it's like, no, it's not done. We were speculation building, which meant we built it, finished it, and then sold it. And, and I did mostly scattered lots and would tear houses down and build a house in its place. And, so I would buy houses that were in bad shape. But it was happening. I mean, when we went live, we would have people literally in the driveway bringing in offers. Now, we hand wrote stuff a lot back then. We didn't have the computer system. So they were literally out there with their buyers, scratching out, coming back in. How about this price? That kind of thing. It's the same thing that we're going through now. When it happened, boom, it happened very, very fast. And so that's when it happened and it started to decline and I started liquidating and dropping prices and just getting out, I had a conversation with my wife. I said, you know what? I don't want to go through a downturn like this. I think this is going to be bad. Now, when I said that, I had no idea it was going to be a decade. I had no idea that it was going to be to 2015 until we started to see things come back. But I watched it happen. Businesses were failing left and right. I remember speaking at business engagement. I was a speaker at, the Restaurant Association of Maryland was my client. We had Maryland Home Builders Association. And I remember speaking at an event to a bunch of restaurateurs, and they were like, man, we are collapsing. We are shutting businesses down. We are in bad shape. We are starving. No one's spending money. That is kind of like the precursor. So when we look at this stuff, and when I say I think it's coming again, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But this would be the first time in the history of the U.S. where a bubble didn't deflate or we didn't have some kind of a crash. But, it took a while for me to want to stay in this business again. So I started a technology company. I started helping the businesses that served me, construction contractors. I helped them with their marketing, their advertising, and helped them do video. And that was when YouTube was only a couple years old. And so anyway, fast forward, I think, it wasn't until about 2013, 14, we started seeing the recovery, 2015. But here we are again, So I think,
Well, when the affordability is as bad as it is, the realtors are getting more scrutiny. Wouldn't you say that's a fair driver behind a lot of this?
But they didn't have the scrutiny back then. So that's different.
But the affordability wasn't.
It wasn't as bad.
Bad as it is now.
It wasn't. Even in the 2006 peak, the housing affordability was nowhere near as disgusting as it is right now.
You can negotiate the commissions. whether it's 6% total, 5% total, even 4% total, it's a big number to sell a house. The realty, I'm not saying it's not worth it in some instances, but the thing that has always gotten me is if you don't have much equity in the home, say you didn't own it for long, if you made a bad decision on the length of term of your mortgage or what have you, you are paying the commission on the bank's money. You're paying that. And that's very different from most other types of commission sales transactions that I know of, that you're paying money on your leverage.
You know, I mean,
Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, there's so here's the deeper issue, and I hear what you're saying in theory, but the deeper issue is the banks are the ones that are appraising. The bank's appraisers are the ones that are appraising the property with the commissions included.
Yep.
And that's what we have to remember. So, you know, if we're going to be looking into the business and scrutinizing the business, here's what I say, and I believe in fair market, and I believe in capitalism, and I believe that our public at large wants to know and has a right to know transparency in a transaction. So I think that anything that's going to happen out of this lawsuit or this market change, this market shift, if we can see the silver lining at the end of the day and say all of this build up in the housing market of the worst affordable time that we've had in the history of the United States, and at least post World War II, if we can come out of this and say at the end of the day there has been more light shed on something that hasn't had it. Your question that you asked me, which I didn't forget, but I didn't address it right, was you were talking about why hasn't this shift already happened in the real estate business with the day of the internet? And the reason is because real estate, number one, is backward-looking data. So that has never caught up. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the current day of the internet, where we can go on a stock ticker and watch it by the second, go up and down, see what's being called, you know, what's being sold, and you look at the housing market that has not had that type of transparency. No one has come up with that, because what's happening is, you know, the MLS is the holder of all that data.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's been the way that houses have been bought and sold at large, because very little of it has been for sale by owner, historically speaking. But the other thing is that it wasn't that long ago. You're dealing with people that are mid-50s or older, or is the average age in the housing, in real estate. They're not tech savvy people. So they did not embrace the technology. Number one, they didn't want to spend the money on their own. So if the broker's not embracing the technology, they embraced the technology from a contractual facilitation. You know, as far as the electronic signings and things like that, and not having paper documents and giving password security to personal data information. I remember it was probably in 2000. It was probably in 2007 they came out with, you know, if you had it, you can't have a contract laying on a desk. It has to be behind a file cabinet, lock and key. Now today it's password protected. It was like a $10,000 or $11,000 fine if the Maryland Real Estate Commission came into the office and could see somebody's personal information of a contract laying on the desk. Well, hell, before that we used to fax them, and we'd ask the, you know, agent on duty to get the fax for us of the offer that came in with all the personal information. So it wasn't that long ago we were dealing with facsimiles and asking them to sit it on somebody's desk. Well, then that all ended, you know, 2007-ish. So it's taken a while for this industry to adopt the technology. Now, is that intentional? I mean, that's a question. Are we not pushing this technology? Because, I mean, I wouldn't like to think so, but, you know, we've certainly embraced it. When I started my business in 2017, I knew that I couldn't go toe-to-toe, dollar for dollar with these big-name brands. So what do? We embraced video technology so that we could, you know, be a choice in a world where, and no one was doing it. Now everybody's trying to do it.
The list is key to the whole operation, right? The MLS, I mean, that's really where the power of the NAR resides, right? To get on the list, you got to deal with a NAR realtor.
Well, they started it.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
I mean, they started
That's
it.
fair,
So,
but
I mean,
what
you
I'm
have
getting at
to-
is that the technology, the internet, if there was one thing that cost people a lot of money, it's getting on that list and being represented by agents that are part of the people that own the
You know,
list.
I guess the question wouldn't be really if it cost them a lot of money. I guess the real question is, was the industry pushed to transparency? And I'm not blaming NAR for that. I'm blaming, really what I say is that everything's about the brokerage, the leadership in the brokerage. And, we're not puppets, for crying out loud. I mean, when I started podcasting, I can't believe the amount of peers that said, I can't believe you're going on and you're telling these people these things, or why are you saying this, or why are you educating these people? Well, why wouldn't I educate the people? I mean, come on. I mean, they deserve to be educated. Has it impacted my sales? No. I mean, my buyers and sellers still want to use me regardless of what I'm saying here is, I'm trying to educate them. So I think that we're not embracing things for certain reasons in our head. And, I've always been a believer that if you're not going to tell them, somebody else will. And, so if we're in business as competitors, I mean, we want to be as transparent as we can, and we want to inform the public so that they have a trust for the business and the people, and that they call you and use you. So I think that we're being afraid of the wrong things. But again, do I think that it was all NAR? No. I mean, the organization started the MLS, for crying out loud. I mean, it was, and in the day, if you did not have that trade organization, you wouldn't know what houses were for sale. You had to call around broker to broker and ask them what houses they had. You had lists that you shared with your homes coming on the market. So the fact that they were the one that created the MLS didn't prevent anybody else from saying, hey, I want to start my own NAR. They could have done that. The fact is they didn't. So,
But the question is now, is it cartelized to an extent that really nobody else can start a list? And that's
No.
No? Okay.
No, I think look, discount brokers have been around forever, okay? There are other MLSs that aren't connected. I mean, you can go on the internet. I mean, for technically speaking, Zillow is an MLS.
Yeah.
And they're not controlled by NAR. They get the data feeds. They get the aggregated data. But if you're a for sale by owner, you can go on Zillow and list your own property. So I think it's a matter of, it's not just the trade or the industry at large. It's the fact that people need to now know that there are resources for them if they choose to go in that direction.
Okay.
So I know we have some super chats you want to try and accomplish as we're winding it down here.
Yes, we love Tuesdays with Todd, my weekly ritual.
Thanks,
you.
Duke.
Thank you so much. All of these social justice warriors are learning rampant immigration affects their job prospects.
David, appreciate your comment.
Thank you so much. Then we had Charles. Thank you again. My aunt bought her home 8 years ago up the road for $250,000. The lady and I, looking at the home, both said she was crazy. I make $100,000 and I can't buy it. Klaus Schwab,
Thanks, Charles.
1, you'll own nothing and be happy. Better get used to it. This is just going to get worse.
I'd agree with that one.
And
Thank
then
you.
we are going to finish out the super chats with, if seen, a lot of movement with Web3 and blockchain involving title deed being turned into an NFT
I've heard of that also.
and be able to do a real estate transaction completely online. Have you
Yeah.
heard of this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So here's the deal. And Melissa, you know this as well as, how many conversations have I had with title companies asking them about blockchain?
Many.
Many. And, I say, so, are you worried? What are your thoughts about blockchain technology affecting your title policy business, which they make a lot of money?
Yeah.
My title buddy, we just talked about it. He's expecting it. He's thinking that title companies are going to make 1/4 of what they make right now, because a lot of what they make is based on title policy, of which I have to, in full transparency, when I buy properties, I don't buy the title policy. And, because I look at it and I say, well, wait a minute, what am I really buying? If I bought that property and they owned it for 40 years or whatever, I mean, what's the chances I roll my dice that there's going to be a claim? Because I believe that most insurance policies, and I don't think title is any different, there are ways around them paying your claim. And I'll give an example. I remember I bought a house one time. It was two houses connected. They were a duplex. And the one house, as I realized when we got it surveyed, because whenever I buy property, I always get them surveyed. I want to know where the property lines are, da-da-da. But the thing was, in this particular instance, I didn't do it until afterwards, after I bought it. It wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't that big of a price. It was a bargain. Bought it from a guy. It was really an investor, shouldn't have been an investor. And the price was really sweet. I think it was like $40,000. And a nice little house. But I remember when I had it surveyed, they had built an addition on the neighbor's house, and it encroached on my property about a foot. Like wrapped around. You couldn't even tell where the back part of my property was because they just extended the addition on the house and took some of the property. And I had a title policy on the time. And I called the title company. I said, hey, look, you guys owe me my money because you didn't pick this up. When I even paid the little survey thing and stuff. And I remember the title company saying, oh, no, those survey things aren't really accurate. And you look on it, and sure enough, it says plus minus. Well, what the hell does plus minus mean? Well, it goes over 12 feet plus minus. Plus minus what? A couple inches, a couple feet. And at that point, I was talking with a friend of mine. This was early on in my investing years. And I was talking with a friend who's a real estate investor. And he said, man, I don't buy those title policies. Now, I'm not telling you not to buy a title policy. I'm telling you what I don't do it. But anyway, so I said to my friend or title companies, I say, well, what does blockchain mean to you and your ability to write title policies? And they're like, I've never heard of blockchain. Hello? Okay, well, you should. You need to look into it because pretty soon blockchain technology is going to take away your ability to write a title policy. Because once that property or those blocks, seal off or whatever you call it, you can't just make claim and title to a property. If it hasn't been done, you won't be able to do it. And so I think that blockchain technology is going to completely wipe out title insurance. It's going to affect how title companies do business. And I think it's just a matter of when we start to see the governments using it. I think Delaware is using blockchain technology. I think they're the first state that is using the blockchain technology. And I think we're going to see more governments starting to put their database into this blockchain technology, and that it's going to make it
And so
hard.
you're talking, and that would affect like how deeds are recorded.
It's going to affect not just a recordation of a deed, but it is going to prevent people from claiming title or liens on that title that haven't been filed. And that's what we're really talking about. When you're looking at a title policy, you're saying, is there a possibility that a municipality will not record a lien, make a mistake and not record a lien, and you buy that property and find out that there is now a lien on it that wasn't caught before you bought it. So if there's a lien on a property when you buy it, it's called a cloud on a title. So all the liens have to be cleared up before it can convey to a buyer. I mean, I guess you could buy a property that has problems with the title, but you wouldn't want to. You're not going to get a loan on it. So I don't know why you would do it. So when a title company does their abstract work, part of what they do is they check to see, are there liens on this property that haven't been satisfied, that need to be paid off or need to be cleared up? And if that gets missed, that's what the title policy picks up. Now, if you're getting a loan, as far as I know, I don't know of any lender that doesn't require it. Well, the reason they require it is because you, the buyer, pay for it. They don't pay for it. You pay for it, and you have to pay the bank's or the lender's policy, which is at the policy limit, at whatever you borrowed. So if you borrowed $500,000, you have to have them covered for the amount that you borrowed.
Does title insurance also have a component for adverse possession, or is it only filed liens?
Yeah, adverse possession is something completely different. Yeah,
Title insurance does not address the potential of adverse possession claim at all.
No, how would it? How could it?
Well, that's what I.
Yeah, I mean, how could it? I mean, so adverse possession is, really where you can take somebody's property because you have maintained it or been using it or lived in it for a period of time, and every state is different. But that would be it would
But
be
the title
hard.
insurance company does not look into the potential for
You know,
that type of claim.
that,
meaning
that would
there's-
be a title
there's-
question. I'm going to say I don't believe so, but
Okay.
I wouldn't know for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's.
But you know what I'm getting at.
Adverse possession, from my understanding, is not a very easy thing to
But it does happen.
achieve.
It does happen, and it's pretty extreme.
I wouldn't know how much it happens. I would need, case files for that. But it is not an easy, and I'll give you an example. I just sold a property a couple years ago where it was called an escape lot. And so what it meant was there was a property next to it that I sold. And when the client did the survey, it only went up to a certain point, but there was another piece to that was along the road.
Right, that's how it
And
usually
you would look
starts.
at it and you would say, okay, well, who owns this lot? Well, there was absolutely nobody that owned a lot that was on record. It was a rarity, an anomaly that basically it was called an escape lot. But that didn't mean that somewhere down the chain of ancestry or chain of title that somebody isn't still alive or couldn't be found. And even though that seller had no idea and they lived there for 30 years, it wasn't a slam dunk that they could just grab that piece of property. They would have to go through a very long process, a posting process.
It has to be open and notorious and
has to be
continuous and all that kind of
100%.
stuff.
And then you're going to have to get a judge that's going to have to determine that you maintain that property without permission. Because something that kills adverse possession would be if you, and I'm not an attorney, but being in the industry for this long, understanding it, they have to occupy or maintain a piece of property without permission.
Or improve it. So I think a lot of times that I see it, it's a sliver of property. It's not necessarily a residence and a whole plot of land. But if the boundaries of the property are not clear, and someone says, "Look, I've cut that grass for 20 years. It was open. It was notorious. It was continuous." Why I even asked the question was when you were saying you don't feel like you get what you would be paying for the title insurance. If they investigated that type of potential claim, they'd be doing some homework.
Yeah, and the thing is, and I'm in total disagreement with this adverse possession, because what we're really saying, and I'll give an example.
It's old.
Let's give an example here. What you're doing is really you're penalizing people that own property. So let's say you own in Texas, let's just say, or Tennessee, or whatever. You own, or you were given, or your family willed you 1,000 acres. How can you possibly police that 1,000 acres? So if somebody decides that they're going to fence in part of your property without permission and do that for a period of time, however many years that state allows, they can take that property from you? Just because you didn't police that 1,000 acres?
I think it's
I don't think it's right.
It dates back to English law. I think it goes as far back as if someone needed a plot of land to farm to feed themselves, that if you did that, that it could become your land over time. That's how it's way. It's not something new.
Yeah.
But it's stuck around.
Yeah. It's stuck around, as do
All the laws.
all the laws. Anyway, what else we got? It's late. We'll close up here tonight. Do we have any super chats that we didn't cover? Or?
It was
got
fun.
them all.
You wanna-
That was fun.
Let's take another question before we
Sure.
call it a night here.
Yeah.
And how many guys think Cliff should start his own YouTube channel?
Oh, God,
You
don't
can-
ask that.
You can give a comment, or if you like the video, you hit that thumbs up. It'll let
And I
Cliff
always
know
thought I
that you
said,
did.
Todd, I want to hang out on your YouTube channel. I don't remember so much about saying
Oh,
I
come
wanted
on.
to start
What
my own.
what you said was that you wanted me to do it with you.
Okay, all right.
Did you not?
Well, we had talked about
You wanted to call
doing
it.
something a little.
Oh.
I told Todd, I said, if you want to get, when I start investigating YouTube and you see the channels that consistently get the 1 million plus hits, I said, Todd, you're gonna have to start talking about things that just like make no sense, just entertainment, general topic
So I
type
brought
of
you
things.
in.
He said, well, you know what, Cliff, you might be a good one for that. And I said, all right, let's do it.
All right, we love you guys. We appreciate you spending your Tuesday nights with us. One more question.
Yeah, final question of the evening. Does anyone really think something as bad as the Great Depression could happen again?
I personally think that we could see something that's worse.
I put my vote on yes.
Yeah, I think we've
We're
never
out
seen a
of time
bubble.
to talk about it, but
Yeah.
I think absolutely.
Yeah, we haven't seen a bubble like this before. Debt is completely out of control, and I don't know an easy solution to this. But
Well, and that we've been the hegemon in the global monetary system since the end of World War II. If we lose that, we got a lot farther to fall, a lot quicker than we did in 1930.
Yep. But anyway, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks for listening. It
Thank
was
you
fun.
so much. Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Cliff.
Thanks for
We'll
having
have
me
to
on.
have you back.
Am I close enough to the mic?
Just don't bang on the table.
All right,
That's right.
dude, that is a bad thing. So.
All right, guys. Hey, we appreciate it if you share us with your family and friends. And as always,
Keep watching Todd.
see you next time.
See you next time.